Fender Mod Shop Precision Bass Unboxing and Demo. My fraught relationship with Fender. Yes, here I am, again, with another new Fender instrument. Didn't I swear them off? There's a lot of talk online about Fender's recent quality control problems, much of it from me. You're paying a premium for that little decal on the headstock. That's probably true, and yet, Fender is still the brand for me. The first bass I learned on was my high school's Fender Precision bass. The first bass I owned was a 1991, made in Mexico Fender Standard Jazz bass. Leo Fender invented the electric bass. Of course, there's also Fender's entry-level brand, Squire. I like Squire. I own a couple of Squires. They're great. But I am grading on a curve. It's a lot easier to accept minor flaws in a $500 instrument than in a $2,000 one. And yet, I found that in many ways, those $500 Squires are better than the $2,000 Fenders. The one Fender I've owned that was flawless was a 2018 American Professional Precision bass. But I never really liked the color. Plus, I wanted a PJ pickup configuration. Enter the Mod Shop. I configured my new bass to be essentially equivalent to an American Professional 2, but with a custom color, and with those PJ pickups I wanted. So, how does it compare to my old American Professional? Let's get it out of the box and find out. Unboxing. Fender ships these basses in a simple cardboard box with no additional cushioning, which is fine since the bass is in a hardshell case. The case does its job. The first thing I noticed when I finally wrangled the case out of the box and opened it was an overwhelming chemical smell.
Oh, guess what, Squidward?
We stink!
It was like nothing I've ever experienced before. Granted, 7 months after my extremely mild case of COVID last July, my sense of smell is still screwed up. But still. I can't tell if the smell is coming from the lining of the case or from the bass itself. The handle also feels weirdly sticky. Not like there's adhesive residue on it, more like the rubber is slightly melted. It's hard to explain, but it's unpleasant to touch. And I never noticed anything like this on earlier Fender hardshell cases I owned. But I never even use a hardshell case. It's too big and bulky. It would be nice if the Mod Shop gave the option to get a cheaper gig bag, or nothing, instead, and save the extra cost. But I suspect they force the hardshell case on you just to maintain a higher list price on these instruments. The bass itself looks great. They did a nice job with the candy tangerine finish, even if it's a bit darker, more of a terracotta or a rust color, than the vibrant orange I expected from the mock-up on the website. The finish is flawless, which, based on what I've been seeing on social media lately, is not a given on these expensive instruments coming out of the Corona factory. A member of the Fender Bass group on Facebook recently posted a picture of their new bass, where a chip in the black finish had been repaired with a Sharpie. To be fair, this was from a shop, not direct from Fender, so there's no way of knowing when it was done. But it was still a new, full-price American Professional 2, arriving like that. Out of the box, the bass was not in tune, no big surprise, but it was set up properly and felt great to play immediately, even though I don't love round-wound strings. I played it for several hours that night. But then, things got ugly. The devil is in the details. I noticed that the split P pickup was set up in an extreme arch, with the middle screws raised significantly compared to the outer screws. That's normal, but this was excessive. Then I discovered that I was able to pull the screws out. They had only been shoved into the holes, not screwed down at all. Then I noticed one of the screws in the pickguard looked weird, like its head was sheared off. Removing the pickguard, I realized what I was seeing was not a screw at all, but the foil shielding on the back of the pickguard. The screw was completely missing. There wasn't even a pilot hole for it in the body. They had just skipped it. When you order a Mod Shop Precision bass with PJ pickups, it comes in a stacked knob configuration. Each stack includes a volume and tone knob for one pickup. That means you can have both pickups on and adjust their tones separately. It's a bit odd, and I'm still getting used to how it works in practice. I was concerned about the stacked knobs, because the stacked knobs on my now former Sire P8 were tall, flimsy, and wobbly. The ones on the Fender are solid and don't protrude too much, but I noticed a grinding sensation when turning the tone knobs. I took them apart and found there's a very low-tech mechanism intended to give them notches, but the effect just felt unpleasant and cheap. So when I put things back together, I left out the special washers with the raised bump for the notches. I didn't have suitable replacement washers, so I just went without. Probably not a great idea, but it's better than the way these felt before. I also noticed a white sticker visible on the side of the split pickup. Weird. But I soon realized that it was the bottom edge of a giant inventory sticker on the back of the pickguard, which had not been removed prior to installation. It was apparent by this point that this bass was absolutely slapped together as quickly as possible, and even though quality control signed off, the inspection must have been as cursory as the assembly process. What's weird, though, is that it does seem like it was set up carefully. The action and intonation are right where I want them to be. I guess that's separate from QC, but it's also odd that they'd still let this bass go out the door with those easy-to-spot issues if anyone at the factory spent more than 15 seconds looking at it. But I haven't even gotten to the worst of it. No shielding. Yep, none. I expect an inexpensive Squier to ship without any kind of shielding in the cavities, but even Fender's entry-level Player Series gets a coat of shielding paint. The cavities on this instrument were not only not shielded, but they were full of the same white powdery dust, probably buffing residue, that I found in the cavities of the $69 Kataxon bass I reviewed a couple months ago. Even if they're not going to apply shielding in the cavities, shouldn't they at least clean them out? So I went about applying my trusty copperfoil shielding tape in the cavities. I made a half-hearted effort to clean out the dust first. In retrospect, I should have been more careful, but I was doing this at about 2 a.m., and by this point I was in a bit of a state. That's fine though. I can have another go at it when I swap in the new pickups. Oh yeah, the pickups. Let's rewind and talk about the specs. I know Fender QC has been mediocre at best lately, but based on that American Professional I sold last year, I wanted to believe that the American Professional 2 series carried on a tradition of quality. And Mod Shop instruments are essentially American Professional 2, with some additional but limited customization options. I made mine as close to an American Professional 2 as possible. I went with the Maple 1963 C-neck with rolled edges and a maple fretboard and V-Mod pickups. First off, the rolled edges are not as rolled as they were on my American Professional. It's not terrible, but the necks on my 2 Squier 40th anniversary basses from last year are smoother and feel better to play. Still, I'm fine with the neck. These pickups, though. I thought the V-Mod split coil pickup in my old American Professional sounded great, even though it did have a tendency to pop a bit if you touched a pole piece. These pickups, though, not only does the split pickup pop if you touch the pole piece, it buzzes extremely loudly if you keep touching it. And the bridge pickup has a ton of hum. Since that hum is inherent to the single coil design, no amount of shielding will fix it. These pickups suck. They've got to go. I've had great success over the years with DiMarzio noiseless pickups, so I ordered a set of their Relentless pickups with nickel covers. Oh, and here they are. Before I install them, though, I need to record some tone demos with the stock pickups. Tone demos with Fender V-Mod pickups. Installing the DiMarzio pickups. Installing pickups is always an interesting challenge because I never know what kinds of surprises I'm going to encounter. In the case of these DiMarzio Relentless pickups, the split P pickup has special circuit boards on the bottom, and the wires connect with a special plug rather than being soldered on directly. The plugs slip out easily during installation, so I had to tape them down. The wires are also bundled together in a thick insulated sheath. The hole connecting the neck pickup cavity to the control cavity was barely large enough to feed both wires through. In fact, I had to use the first one to pull the second one through. DiMarzio's installation diagrams are for a standard PJ configuration with 3 pots, volume, volume, tone. So I had to make my own notes of how things were wired up before. As I've made known on this channel, I can't solder. But I actually think it's preferable to just wind these wires together and wrap them with electrical tape. If I screw something up, it's a lot easier to undo. And I did. The other challenge was that the bridge pickup is so tall that when I had everything reassembled, it was touching the strings. I had to crank the screws down so far, I worried they might go right through the back of the bass. At one point, I heard a crunching sound and freaked out a bit, but all was well. Even if these pickups didn't sound any different from the stock pickups, I'd probably prefer them for their smooth, rounded edges, and for the fact that they don't pop when you touch the pole pieces. But I do think they sound better too. Let's check them out. Tone demos with DiMarzio Relentless pickups. So, why do I keep coming back to Fender? I've been asking myself that question repeatedly. I've heard explanations for Corona's QC problems over the past few years, a surge in demand during COVID, and challenges keeping up with that demand, the company's current investors prioritizing cost-cutting over consistent quality, resting on their laurels and letting that little decal do the heavy lifting. But that doesn't explain all of the issues I had prior to that. Though, to be fair, my earlier issues were with instruments from their Ensenada factory in Mexico, which has long had notoriously inconsistent quality control. I'll stand by my assessment that right now, you're more likely to get an instrument you'll be happy with from Fender's Indonesian and Chinese manufacturing partners under the Squier banner than from Fender itself. The exception being Fender's Made in Japan line. But the MIJ options available in the US are extremely limited. After some mods, but even right out of the box, I've been very happy with recent Squiers. And I've been disappointed with every Fender, despite Fender instruments costing 2 to 5 times more. It does seem to be headstock envy. That little Fender spaghetti logo matters. It matters for 2 reasons. 1, like I said at the beginning, Fender is what I learned on. Fender is what I always wanted to own. Fender represents the platonic ideal of the electric bass. 2, Fender is what peers expect to see. Fender is a mark of legitimacy. That may be a weak argument, but when you're trying to hang with pros, you need to look like one. If you walk in the door with something that is immediately identifiable as a student instrument, or something weird that people have never seen before, you're less likely to be taken seriously, even if people's assumptions around a brand name are wrong. But, ultimately, I just want a Fender, and I want it to be good. The problem is, I want a good new Fender, but new Fenders aren't all that good. Still, despite everything I've said here, there are enough good things about this mod shop Fender that I was able to find a way to make it work. But I shouldn't have to. Fortunately, the DiMarzio Relentless pickups absolutely transformed my attitude about this bass from something I was keeping at arm's length and almost regretting to something that, I hope, may finally represent the end of my Fender journey. Almost. I have a Squier Classic Vibe Bass 6 on pre-order with Chicago Music Exchange. Stay tuned.